Vegas. I think, as you know, we're in Las Vegas for Summer League. We've had 2 games, and it's pretty hot here. So, but it's working out so far so good. The guys have played hard, and we have some veterans here as well that are getting their workouts in the morning. In fact, as I speak, some of the veterans who are not playing in Summer League are getting a workout at a local gym. I'd also like to just briefly touch on, some of the players that won't be coming back and thank them for their service. Devontae, Malik, Caleb, of course, Cody and Biz, various levels of contributions over the years, but great Hornets, great teammates, and they'll be missed. So I just wanted to mention and thank them for their service. The last 2 or 3 weeks have been pretty busy with the draft and free agency and the ability to make trades. Without going into great detail about each move, I will think and say that I think we've gotten a good mix of veteran players that'll help us win, and then I think we've also continued to add youth and younger players and talent to the system, which is something that I think we've indicated over the years that we wanted to continue to try to do. I also mentioned, at my last press conference that I thought we were a little bit ahead of where I thought we would be. So, maybe there was a little bit more of an emphasis on adding, veteran players. So, feel free to ask me questions, about any of the moves in the last 2 or 3 weeks. Been very, very busy. A very unique time for sports. With the last draft taking place, just seems like yesterday, and then the draft we just had last week, and then free agency, and just a very unique time in our sport. And lastly, I think you know that we've extended our coach, Coach Borrego, and we're happy to have him back. He gives us stability, a good young coach that's gotten better every year he's been with us, and I think the extension's a reflection of how we feel about him going forward. So with that, I'd like to just turn it over and answer as many questions as I possibly can. Thank you.
We'll start with Jonathan.
Hey, Mitch. Hope you're doing well. First question is, you just mentioned that you had said previously that you really wanted to add talent in free agency. I was wondering, do you feel like, to become a playoff team, do you feel like you did enough so far to get to where you want to get to? And do you anticipate being done at this point?
Yes, I think we are done, quote unquote, with the heavy lifting. That doesn't mean, in this business, there can't be additional moves. But our roster in terms of guaranteed contracts is, at its limit. In fact, it's a little bit over the limit going into the regular season. So, yeah, I think we're done. I think we've made some progress. We've added some veterans, and we had a pretty active draft. And you're always happy after the draft because guys drop right on your board, and you always think you got a deal, right? So you're always happy. At the end of the day, you have to wait a couple of years to look back on it, and then you really find out how successful your draft was. So having said that, yeah, I think we had a good draft. I think we've improved the talent level on the team, and I think with some of the veterans, that we've added, we've also given our team, the ability to compete and hopefully for a playoff position.
And if I could ask, what are your thoughts on how LiAngelo has played so far through 2 games?
Jello?
Yes, Jello.
Well, he's been in the gym, for the last month working with his brother. We allow our players to have a workout partner. They can come in, off hours, weekends. So he's been coming in. He's been coming in, and scrimmaging with some of our younger players and our veterans. So he's been here for about a month. And, based on what we've seen, we invited him to Summer League. And, 2 days ago, he just had, a great shooting game, right, in game one. So I think that's the one thing that, he could probably do in our league right now is shoot the ball. He plays hard, great teammate, quiet, right? I don't know if you've gotten a chance to know him at all, but doesn't say a whole lot, just kind of goes about his business. But we've only had 2 games. We'll see where it takes us. But the first game I know was fun for him, and that's it. We'll just take it day by day, and we'll see where it leads.
Rod?
Hey, Mitch, you guys were able to add Kelly Oubre Jr. through free agency this year. Second straight year, you're able to pick up a free agent. Do you feel this is becoming, I won't say a trend, but it's something that's encouraging for you guys that people want to come play in Charlotte now?
I hope so. Last year getting Gordon was huge. Very unexpected. I've said that many times. And I think this past season, the style of play and the way we move the ball and the way you can get the ball and everybody's involved. I think, there is a little bit of a buzz in the league about, how the Hornets play. I think that's a good thing. And then adding Kelly, this offseason, was another good thing, right? You wouldn't call him, the highest, level of free agent, but he was a very coveted free agent in this period. And I wouldn't say he's a Gordon Hayward status, but I'm not sure a year or two ago that we could have got a player like that. So he makes us deeper. He gives us, some veteran leadership. We expect him to play and make a contribution, which you always can't say about the rookies. He's ready to play. So, I hope going forward, we do have flexibility. At some point in time, you got to start addressing, right, the players that you have, with rookie extensions or veteran extensions. So you've got to be careful about, even though you have money going forward, you have to be careful how you spend it. So we do have that flexibility. And I would hope that, I hope that Charlotte's becoming more of a destination, and that would be great.
And you mentioned earlier in the offseason about trying to address depth with the draft and the guys you brought in so far via free agency. Do you feel you addressed any depth issues that could help you guys moving forward?
Was that depth issues?
Yes, depth issues. Yeah. Make sure you guys, yes.
Yeah, especially with the recent Kelly Oubre signing. Going into, the last day or two, we did need some more veteran status kind of in that position. And getting him gives us, more veteran depth at that position. He can cover more than one, spot, whether it's the 2 or the 3, and even the forward sometimes. So that addition was key, to give us some veteran backup. Now, we've got a lot of players at a lot of positions, with the draft, but they're young. I can't begin to say, how much they play. So adding a veteran like that really helps us going forward.
Sam Perley?
Hey, Mitch, hope you're doing well. The one trade you guys made, or I guess the first trade you guys made to get Mason, what does he provide for you at the center position, maybe on some more of the offensive end that you didn't necessarily have in terms of how it fits with the offense moving forward?
Well, I got to be careful, right? Because I don't want to indicate that, Biz and Cody weren't an important part of this team last year. But you've got to sometimes you just got to make hard decisions. And they were both free agents, so there was uncertainty as to what the market would provide for them. And when the trade came up to get Mason, we feel we've added, a player that rebounds the ball, gives us some rim protection, play makes a little bit. He's pretty good at the top of the key, passing the ball and getting players involved, very unselfish. So in that regard, we feel we've addressed the need with some flexibility. Not only is he a veteran, but he's on a 2-year contract that also gives us some flexibility, going forward.
Thank you.
Sam Farber.
Hey, Mitch, hope you're doing well. You mentioned after the draft that, expectations would be rising for the franchise. Now, after free agency, do you have an idea of, is it just get over that hump and get into the playoffs? Is it a top 6 seed? Where is the bar for you right now based off the moves that you've made in the new acquisitions?
Well, I think we've, added to the talent pool with our young players, and our free agent signings and the trades with the veterans, I think, give us a better chance to compete. And yes, I think the bar has been risen. I think there are more expectations, this year than there were a year ago. Having said that, the goal is the same, really, to continue to add talent, grow this roster, make the playoffs, and advance in the playoffs. Our goal is just not to get the A seed or to make the play-in tournament. We want to get in and we want to advance. So that's the goal. Where and how successful we are, I don't know right now. But yes, expectations, are more than they were a year ago, and they should be. We've made a lot of moves. We've got some talented players on this team already, and expectations should be higher.
Steve Reed.
Hey, Mitch. Hey, I was wondering if you talk. I asked you a little bit more about the center position. You got Plumlee. There were some other names out there. Did you make a run at any of those other names, or were you had you determined that you weren't going to be able to get any of those guys either because of salary cap reasons or they just weren't available? I wonder if you could just speak to how you addressed that center position and what your thoughts were going in and how it developed in free agency. Thank you.
Well, going into free agency, there's 30 teams, right? And there were a couple of centers available, but you don't know where you rank. You don't know what the marketplace is going to be like, once free agency begins. So there's a lot of uncertainty going into free agency. The deal for Mason was done before the draft. So, a bird in hand, right? Even with the 2 centers we had, Biz and Cody, we didn't know what the market would be for them. So we felt we got somebody with, 2 years remaining, who's a proven veteran, on a good financial contract. One of the other considerations also is, we've got some young players on the team that we just don't know how quickly they're going to develop, with Vern Carey and, Nick Richards. So to go out and spend money on a player, for 4 years, that might be big numbers. I think our thought process was to get somebody, that's a veteran under a reasonable contract, and also give these young guys a chance, to grow a little bit. And maybe a year from now, they're going to be the guys that maybe you feel we should have pursued this year in free agency. So we didn't want to spend a lot of money when maybe, we had that same player right under our nose. So, it's a factor. Like I said earlier, we got a veteran that I think gives us skills at that position we have not had before. And it's also going to give, our younger players a chance to grow. Now, we also had a draft, where we drafted, a big player. So it also gives him a chance, to grow a little bit and for us to evaluate him.
Richie.
Hey, Mitch, this is Richie of BuzzBeat. In the past, you've talked about where you're not in a place necessarily where you can be too picky about the positions that you draft and acquire. You just want to get talent. With that said, are you selective about the players in terms of JB's system? And if so, what are those skills that you look for when you acquire these players that you did to fit in within the system?
Yeah, it pretty much remains about talent still. Keeping in mind the way the coach plays, that's a factor. But we're not going to draft, players just based on how the coach plays. the coach has been extended, right? So that's a good thing, and we expect him to be here for years to come. But that's not to say 10 years from now or 8 years from now, we'll have a different coach and a different system, right? So it's a factor in the draft. But this year, our focus remained on just drafting the best available talent. And we had a bunch of picks. And I think we've added to the system in terms of young talent. Some of them will be on our roster. Some of them may be in Greensboro. But it's good to have players in the system. And I think we accomplished that.
JB?
Hey, Mitch, JB Ricks here from Spectrum News 1. I appreciate you taking out this time. I wanted to get one question in on LaMelo and the spectacular rookie season he came off of. What are you and the rest of the organization expecting out of him, not just this offseason, but for the next step of his career, which will be his second year in the league? What do you guys want to see most?
Well, we want to make sure he's healthy with his wrist. And he's been working out now, full steam, for over a month, so we don't expect any problems there. The biggest part about his game is that he makes his teammates happy, right? Somebody who's got the ball in his hands, and if you're a player, just knowing that if you're open, if you run the floor, if you make a cut, he'll see you. So yes, he's fun to watch, right? I know he can score. He does a lot of different things. Rookie of the year, maybe there's going to be more expectations. But going forward, just, for him to remember to be a great teammate. And there's a reason why, his teammates are happy playing with him, which is, he loves to pass the ball. And I think that's his biggest gift. So going forward, I think that's what I think we'd like him to focus on, continue to be a great teammate. Which he will, and then also to continue to make your teammates happy.
Danny?
Mitch, Danny Thompson with the three-point conversion. Great to see you as always. Kind of piggybacking off LaMelo. When you looked at the offseason this year, knowing that JB wanted to run positionless basketball and LaMelo likes to push the pace, do you feel like he was going to add players around him to be able to push that pace, like an Oubre and other additions like a Wandu on the wings, to help push that pace forward?
Yeah, we do want to continue to play the same way. Our coach believes in that style of play, ownership, myself. It's fun to watch. I think our fans, love to watch the way we play the game. So that's a continued emphasis going forward, is to play at a high pace, which is pretty popular in the NBA right now. It's not like it's something that we've just invented. It is pretty popular. It is fun to watch. Our players like to play that way. So that is an emphasis going forward. Yes, in free agency, to some degree, the draft, we looked at our team and said, hey, let's get players that can do that. So that's the way we want to play, and I think that's the way the players want to play.
And quick follow-up, when you look at your opportunity in Greensboro, the way the franchise has developed second-round picks through Greensboro, how important is it to load up on these second-round picks and add them onto the Greensboro roster, knowing the success you've had with guys like Devontae and Jalen and the Martin twins when they were here?
Yeah, it's a good question. We did trade this year for a future first-round pick. And, part of that is to get the players in the system now, right? I mean, if you draft with 2 picks, a first and a second every year, then it's going to take you X amount of years to get the talent in the system. If you have multiple picks, beyond the 2, this year we had 4, then, you're loading the system up a little bit earlier, and it gives you a chance to, move ahead a little bit more quickly than maybe you would if you just had 2 picks a year. So I don't know who's going to be in Greensboro. I do feel we've got talented players, beyond just the draftees, with our exhibit. our exhibit players and our two-way players. And our coach has done just a wonderful job, utilizing Greensboro. It's a great facility. It's an hour and a half away, even less. Players can go back and forth, get big minutes, and, play a game at night and be back for practice the next morning in Charlotte with the veteran team. So that remains an emphasis. And once again, player development, for us from the beginning was one of the key components, to try to move this team forward.
James?
Hey, Mitch, James Plowright at The Hive. Just wanted to ask about a couple of the guys we haven't talked about yet, Wes Smith, Ish Smith. Just talk a little bit about what you liked about both of their games and how you think they can contribute to the roster this coming year.
Well, Wes is, a talented young player. We'll have to further evaluate him, during the summer and in training camp. Ish gives us some veteran presence, in the backcourt. He plays the way we want to play, which is with pace. And, he's a local player, with Charlotte ties, not that that factors in, but I know he wanted to be here and he's happy to be here. But we needed some help in the backcourt, beyond just LaMelo, right? You just don't know. And LaMelo is completely healthy. We expect him to start and to play big minutes. But, you need a player to come in and play some minutes. And then you also need some additional locker room leadership. So I think that he'll provide that for us.
Thank you.
Steve?
Hey, Mitch, apologize if this is a little premature, but my assumption is that, Melo and Gordon, Terry are all, pretty much etched in the starting lineup. What do you see as far as the other two spots? You obviously have some depth there and some different guys who can rotate in now, but, what do you kind of see as going into the season for those other spots?
Yeah, it's really a question for the coach. I think people might say, well, you've gotten Mason, so he'll probably start, right? And then the season ended with Miles starting. So you might assume that, and that wouldn't be a bad assumption. But that's really more of a question for the coach. See how things go in training camp, preseason, looking at combinations of, various players and, bringing players off the bench to give the team a boost. So that's really a coaching question. But I don't think it would be a bad assumption to assume that Miles would continue to start and that Mason would start, but that remains to be seen.
Jonathan?
Mitch, this could be a coaching question as well, but I guess when you all were evaluating James Bouknight in the draft, how did you envision him kind of fitting with this team?
Well, initially he's a young talent, which is what we're trying to add to this group. I hope he continues to work. I think he will, and develop. He's only, I believe, 20 years old. I'm not sure anybody can pencil in minutes for him next year. I think his talent would provide that he could play some right away. But that's something that, he's got to work out in training camp, with the coach. It's a lot to throw at somebody, especially when you're now starting the season about a month from now, maybe a little bit longer. Normally there's a draft that's in June, and then the player goes to summer league, and then he's in Charlotte, the remainder of July and August and September. And you've got more of a time period to, get into the fold, so to speak. But, with the draft being moved back and summer league being moved back, things are going to come a lot quicker this year. So his talent indicates that he's good enough to get minutes. We'll have to wait and see.
Rod?
Hey, Mitch, you mentioned earlier about having to, I guess, determine about extensions with rookies and cap stuff. I guess, how do you determine as an organization moving forward extensions for potential guys like Miles and stuff like that and Terry Rozier? Like, how do you figure out the next step, I guess?
Well, there are rules, that prohibit extensions, and there are rules that, allow you to extend a player. So that's really the first, hurdle to get over is, the rules that allow you to do stuff like that. I have to talk to ownership. I mentioned earlier, keeping an eye on, our roster and our salary structure going forward, to provide for flexibility. We don't want to get ourselves, in a position where, we've got a lot of large contracts and, we're not at that point where we want to be in terms of competing, right? We want to, get into the playoffs and we want to advance, right? So you got to be careful to not feel you're getting too much ahead of yourself, right? Which is, it's hard. There's a lot of, in this league, you can get ahead of yourself too soon, and before you know it, you've got zero flexibility going forward. So those are all factors. At the end of the day, we do have flexibility, and those kinds of discussions, will take place with ownership, and we'll figure out how to proceed.
We'll wrap it up with James.
Hey, Mitch, James again. You mentioned last year Gordon Hayward was a bit of a surprise. In terms of this offseason, how much did it kind of go to plan as you guys sat ahead of free agency in the draft? Are you surprised where you are now, or do you feel you kind of executed the route that you guys laid out before it all kicked off?
Well, a month ago, we didn't know that, we could trade for Mason. We didn't know that we could convert, one of our picks at 56, 57, into the 37th pick. We didn't know that Kai Jones would still be there on the board, in the late teens. So, those things we didn't know, right? They happened, almost, on the clock. So, for example, Kai Jones, we didn't make that decision until, the 16th pick in the draft. You've got X number of minutes before, so we had to make a deal real quick, and we got fortunate. We hope, that New York had 2 picks and we were able to get a pick. So those kinds of things you can't plan for. We knew we were going to have the 11th pick. We knew we weren't going to trade it unless something really unusual came about. So we knew that going in, right? We knew we were going to get a good player there. But the other stuff we didn't know. And I guess to answer your question, I think just considering, the trades, the free agents, and the draft, I think we probably moved ourselves even a little bit more ahead than we thought we would have been a month ago.
Great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mitch. Appreciate your time. Thank you, everyone, for joining the call. And as I mentioned earlier, we will send out